was executed by the state. EMK, I think you know, when we speak of this era being a very violent era, the 1980s, EMK, POKO, and many other people were now violent against the state, such that they've also gone mass killings. They also set up traps, they lay bombs, they do whatever the case may be. Hence, we say this was the bloodiest era from the 1980s to the 1990s. Guys, a whole lot of people, like, that was one era where blood was just a thing. On both sides. But we do know the others were using it as in defense and response, right? And then we therefore spoke about that very term number 4 that they spoke about today, which they introduced, which is total onslaught. No, total onslaught. When they come about with the total onslaught, it's because of the resistance that they are being met with. And they are trying to therefore come up with more repressive measures. For repressive measures to be brought about, they therefore come up with that very claim of total onslaught that communists in South Africa are trying to take over. They are trying to overthrow the government, and that therefore gives the government the ability, or therefore they wanted rather permission and leverage, so that they could be able to come up with a response that would be fitting to total onslaught, where they are saying communists are trying to take over. And when we say communists are trying to take over, they are therefore going to introduce them, which we refer to as total strategy. Let us go back to that great last time, as a matter of fact, where we spoke about coming from Nabo. I forgot this one. We were talking about yes, our Marshall Plan and all those plans, all those things will be made by something on society. Or such as the case is here. Total onslaught will be met by total strategy. Oppression is met by resistance. Resistance is met by repression. Total strategy is met by total onslaught. So these are responses. It's a give and take kind of situation altogether. So it's a cause and effect kind of name. It's a concept of a cause and effect. So when it comes to a cause, it's going to be wherein we talk about the very fact that blacks are being ill-treated and they are therefore rioting, or they are resisting against the government of the oppression. And effect will therefore be then, if you are really looking at, which is even today, you can still see the ramifications of the apartheid and the resistance. That some people still do not like what is happening to governmental because of the very fact that they remember what it took for us to eventually get what we have today. So in this instance, when it comes to total onslaught, it is that claim that we are talking often about, that communists are trying to take over the country and are doing it in masses, that the government came up with, as Peter Bukota was the premier at the time. And he says that so that he could come up with more repressive measures, like I said. And that's where now we are going to talk about Peter Bukota coming up with more reforms. And the reforms are going to be part of what we refer to as the repression. We asked ourselves, was it a reform or was it a repression? The fact of the matter is, it was a repression, because why would they come up with more reformations that are going to make things a lot good, a lot better for blacks, when the matter of fact was they did not want to find themselves being equals with blacks. So it was repressive measures instead of reforms that were mainly going to become good at the very at large for blacks. It says the army was a constant presence in townships in the 1980s, wherein we already spoke about the very fact that initially they were using the state police, right? And now that there's repression, strikes are a thing. Many people are boycotting and not going to work. That's where now Abo Kosas are also coming about as an organization that are going to be for students. Abo Fosatu and many others, they are going to come into existence, which means Amakas for townships at large, they are now becoming the hub of a resistance of that very thing that we refer to as the apartheid. So that's where now they are saying, let us try to make it a point that we cull it from the very root. Let us stop it from the very point at which it happens, or let us go to where it starts, which is the townships. And in the townships, what are they going to have? That's where they are now going to have a lot more police present in the townships. That's where they are now going to send even the SADF into those townships. What are they trying to do? They are trying to stop anything that they see or deem as suspicious. Says one. And in this instance, it says the army was a constant presence in the townships in the 1980s, arousing much anger. Yellow armored vehicles called Caspiers were like this one on display in the Apartheid Museum, were a familiar sight in most townships. So I need you to understand, in the morning, it's there. In the evening, it's there. At any point, it's there. Where you once used to play football in the dirty grounds of Soweto, for example, now there are cars that are parked You are trying to go to church. You are meeting police officials. The car is passing by. At this point, it seems and sounds like harassment to a lot of people. And that's why the society and the community at large is going to be so much as angered by that which they have been mainly experiencing because of the very fact that they are saying, these people have not done enough. Do they think they have not done enough? Because already we are living under the very guise of oppression. Yet again, they still want to keep us confined to these very areas where they are allowing little room for us to resist. They are even going to the length of bringing about such cars or bringing about the army. And that is therefore going to be something that angers the community, and then the community will take up in arms. And then here in this instance, we have Peter Botha, where he introduced a new constitution as a measure of reform. Now, these are the reformations that we are talking about, that we said we are going to talk about as the introduction. The reformations that Peter Botha is going to come up with is, initially, you do remember that in this country, the people that were in power were two. It was the British and the Afrikaners. This is one. And when we speak of the British, we are saying the English. Let us say for context the English, right? And that therefore excluded everyone. Indians, colors, blacks were not part of the parliament. This is one. They were not part of parliament. Such that when the resistance was happening, governmentally blacks had no say. That's one thing that they were fighting for. You are not even, we are the masses at this point, but you are not even part of the decision makers. That therefore makes it very difficult for a black person. This is one. So in essence, when it comes to the which is going to be reformation, Peter Botha will say, okay, people are fighting. And at this point, it looks like these people are willing to do anything and everything. By people, who do we mean? Let us go back and revisit this very point that we were trying to make when we were talking about this. We said this man is Indian. This one is white. This one is black. The next here is the colored. The colored here. Right? We have the colored here. Which all these people, they are part of one umbrella. Who are they fighting against? The government of oppression, which is the apartheid. Right? When Peter Botha sees it, okay, they are fighting collectively, which means at this point we are at a disadvantage in terms of numbers. When they are together like this, everyone is now coming and forming one band, we'll have a problem. That's why he comes up with reformations. That will eventually be part of the repression. In which sense? When he introduces this constitution in 1983, it is going to be seen as a measure of a reform. Why? Because in this constitution, it's going to give the Indians and colors limited representation, except blacks. Why? So that they cannot therefore come together yet again to say, let us meet and let us have one commonality of fighting against the government of oppression. Now Indians are given an advantage. Colors are also given an advantage, but blacks, they are excluded. Which therefore sets them aside as the only people who are not part of the governance of this very country. Which therefore makes it yet again very difficult for blacks to resist. Because now they've lost yet another portion or another segment of people that they were mainly representing, that they were mainly resisting repression with. Which means when Indians and colors are given the limited rights, it therefore excludes them as people who are still fighting for liberation. Why? They have some privileges. They are not going to relate to the same problems as blacks. It takes us back to that very instance of the formation of the organizations where we say in grade level, we have the South African Indian Congress, we have the APO, and we also have SAWNC. Where all these organizations were mainly specifically made to cater to specific racial groups. Now they were taking us back to that point, let us not work as a collective, because united we stand, but divided we fall. So in this instance, when you speak of that, it therefore says they were going to be given a limited representative in what we refer to as a tricameral parliament. When you speak of a tricameral parliament, by tri they mean three. Now you also need to think of how many classes. When you speak of a capitalist society, how many classes does that? 3. So tricameral is something of that nature as well. Except this one is not going to be like this. Right? It's going to be one triangle that is going to have a division, which means one, how many commandments? 2. On the second one, there's going to be a division, which makes it 1, 1. And then the other one is going to be at the top. Who's going to be at the top of this point? What? Who's going to be sharing the 2 points? Indians and colors. But in terms of power in parliament, who's going to have power? Except Indians and colors are going to be given the impression that they have power. And when they are given the impression, they will not want to fight in the same fight with blacks. That is the information that will therefore be introduced as part of Peter Botha's mean of approach, as part of what we refer to as a total strategy. wherein they are saying, as part of the total strategy, the government needs to have total control of what is happening in the country. So here it says, Africans were excluded from voting all together. And then here we have the United Democratic Front, which is EUDF, which is formed in 1983 to oppose the tricameral parliament. It brought together over 500 anti-apartheid organizations in a wave of mass resistance. When they say United Democratic Front, it included everyone that was going against the apartheid. There are Indians and Coloureds who have now been given a platform, and there are Indians and Coloureds, there are whites and everybody else who are saying, but no, the platform we are given, they must all think we are from somewhere that I will not mention. So in this instance, when it comes to this very tricameral parliament thing that was done, it was not done out of sheer goodness or good-heartedness of Peter Mbongo. He saw it as a move that will therefore divide the movement that was now so much as strong because they stood together. And others who actually looked at it from a sober point of view, they were like, they think we are parents this one. They think we are parents. That's why they are therefore going to form their own, which will be known as United Democratic Front, which seeks to oppose everything that is being done by the tricameral parliament. Tricameral parliament at the end of the day, it does not favor everyone. And it's not like Indians and Coloureds have power in the parliament. Who has the power? It's wise. The only thing that they are given is the privilege to sit next to a white man and they start thinking all of a sudden they are part of the big things or the decision makers. So those who were part of UDF, they were against tricameral parliament in its existence, saying we do not want the tricameral parliament. And who constituted the UDF? It was all the organizations, your ANC, PACs, SACPs, trade unions, COSAS, COSATU, anything and everything that you can think of that was in existence, that made it to challenge the government of oppression. They were part of United Democratic Front, and it was formed in 1983. And then we also speak of, in 1985, the ANC called on those in the struggle to render South Africa ungovernable. The youth took to the streets and resistance struck through the country. That's why the 1980s we continuously remind each other and keep on repetitively saying, so in the 1980s were the bloodiest of eras. Because even the ANC itself, as part of the movement that was now heading towards liberation, and as part of people who are going beyond the repression, like we did say, when you resist and resist some more, you'll be able to break beyond the repression so that you go to or attain freedom. At this point, ANC is also saying, hey guys, let us make sure that we make South Africa ungovernable. What do they mean? Let's cause chaos. Let us strike, let us boycott, let us not go to work, let us do whatever means necessary for as long as we make South Africa ungovernable. And that was therefore part of them going against this very thing that is referred to as the total strategy. But when the government tried to make it a point that they are divided, they also responded by saying, we will make things 10 times difficult together. And for the day, I'd like to end the day. If you have any questions, we are free to ask. Please, you can end the video.